Fantastic.
Is this okay?
That is
Yes.
perfect, Mohamati. That is 100%. Cool. Let's open up. Chris, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our very special event. We engage today on a topic that is absolutely essential. And we have a panel of folk who are going to talk with us and engage with us around their experiences and expertise in these particular spheres. And so we're grateful for the many who are joining us throughout Africa and the world. And some of us will be able to see your faces, but welcome to each of you. My name is Christopher Harrison, and we are representing in this particular time the My Faith Hub. And so the contributors are all going to speak into this context under that particular banner. Now, Robin Keat represents the Inner Voice Creative, who and the team aims to amplify the voices of all local churches by giving them the tools they need to thrive in ministry. I love that word, thrive in ministry. And the My Faith Hub itself is a collection of faith-based visual content provided by the local church for the mobile networks in Africa that seek to connect their subscribers to their faith. Now, this has been an interesting year. I guess we started it by saying, let's have a 2020 vision. And maybe we have, whatever that 2020 vision is, maybe we're looking at things in the way we should be. And maybe we need to be hearing God saying to us, you are where you need to be. And each of us therefore approach this conversation from where we are. And that's a great thing, because God has been at work in our history and our past, but also in this particular moment. So I'm going to just share and introduce the particular panel participants so that you all know, and invite Robin, if you would wave your hand, so that is the key person who's going to be managing the Zoom time together, letting people in and facilitating questions and so on. Then we have Tatenda. Tatenda, if you could wave your hand, TC, and we are grateful that he is with us. And he is seated in Nairobi. So we're grateful for him being with us. And then Chris Arnold. Chris Arnold, welcome to us, the Renew Church in Nairobi. Then we have Mohamotsi Dietpoleng. Wave your hand, Mohamotsi. Are you waving your hand? There we go. And he is speaking to us from Edenvale. And then we have Jackie Rivas, all the way from Johannesburg, also from the Methodist community. And then we have Brent Brooks. Brent, just wave your hand. There is Brent. Welcome to you from Ole Connect. And last but not least at all, Kate, dear love, wave your hand. We're looking forward to hearing so much from you, from your expertise as well. So today, as we begin this conversation, a couple of questions, and we're going to launch into the northern part of Africa first. You've got more experience perhaps in this space, being more engaged with things, but let's hear from you. First of all, TC and Chris, let's first of all from TC, your experience of the adaptations to the dynamics that the pandemic has given to us, but also being in person and online. Your take.
I think the first thing is that we had to change how we think about technology, right? I think technology was in God's mind. The very command that God gave Adam and Eve was impossible to obey without technology. Think about it. When it said, go and multiply, fill the earth, have dominion, name all the animals, that, it was impossible to actually obey and fulfill that very command without technology. So technology was always in God's mind from day one. I think the biggest front that we had to, change was just how we thought about the place of technology and its redemptive use in the church, and not just as a tool. I think we had sort of relegated it previously. So I think the biggest area that we needed to adapt was how we thought about it, and the redemptive use and the redemptive purpose of technology. I think that's the biggest front for us that we had to adjust how we think and where we place it in terms of God's sovereign, choice to allow technology to thrive, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Thank you. And Chris, do you want to pick up on that as well?
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. I think that the thing I would add on to that as well is it made us rethink about people. It made us rethink church. Like, the church has been in the dark ages for generations, like always coming last to the party of everything new that's happening. And I think this season made us ask questions that we haven't bothered to ask, that we've been so lazy for generations going, well, we're just going to keep doing church like this forever because that must be working. And instead, this has made us go, hang on, what questions do we need to ask? Are we doing the right thing? Does God even want us to do church the way we're doing it? So, and we live in Kenya in this middle of this cultural Christian bubble. So people go to church largely because it's culturally appropriate. And all of a sudden, all of that cultural pressure disappeared. So guess what? People disappeared from church. And so we had to begin to think, ask different questions about people and different questions about how would we express faith to them. I think that one of the things that we found really helpful was to go, wow, our services are really somber online. They're really like dull and boring. We need to add some personality to these services, otherwise people are going to walk away. It's like so heavy to watch. And it's not like they politely sit through a service like they would in person. They actually just close their screens or turn.
If we then jump into asking Jackie and Mokhomotsi to jump into the space from the southern part of Africa. We're in your hands, Jackie.
Hi, everyone. It's really good to be with you. And it's so amazing to be with people from across the world. And I think that, I used to belong to a tiny little church a couple of years ago, and we had this statement as you left the church, which said, you're now entering the mission field, which was kind of like an exciting thing, like now we're in the mission field. And I think the truth is, we got a huge shock the day church shut down. And the reality is we weren't really ready for it. We've been speaking about the world changing. We've been speaking about the era of pandemics that was on its way, but we were really quite taken aback. We weren't ready. And I think it's been an amazing gift to us because it's really given us an opportunity to press the reset and ask similar questions. I think Chris and you both mentioned it, that what are we actually going to do? Is this really how God wants us to do church in the 21st century? And we kind of can really ask that question without just doing it because it's just been done. So it's really exciting and it's incredibly scary at the same time because, I'm a minister in the church, so it's really important for us to have people in church. But maybe that's actually not how it's meant to be in the next season. Does that change the fact that we're Christians? No. So how are we in this next season? So that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Good. Thank you, Jackie. And to Mokhomotsi, also Methodist minister in Edenvale.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. Greetings to everyone. And just to hook on the point that Jackie was making, and for me, this era has just knocked open our creativity. I haven't been in the church for about 25 years now as a minister. One of the things that I know negative in their thinking, they would want to conserve, they would want to do things by tradition and all that. And suddenly we woke up one morning in March 2020 and we realized that everything that we knew was obliterated. And that actually knocked open our creativity, and we were forced to then let the creative juices flow and think out of the box. But what it also has done for us, and it is continuing to do, and it's going to happen even more as we get deeper into the rising decade, It is that young people, children who were seen and not heard, are suddenly at the forefront of the thing, because now you've got all elderly folk who've got to depend on children. Literally, where I am during the pandemic, I was making a joke that my church here at Edenvale was carried by an 18-year-old for 6 months. And if that 18-year-old, that is my son, if that 18-year-old woke up and said, I ain't doing this no more, the church was gone. And this is what has happened. God has put young people in front with us. So it is a gift, in a way. It is a gift. Suddenly, young people have found a place of relevance in the church.
Wow, those are incredible insights for that. So for those who are just still joining us one by one along the way, we have been engaging with 4 clergy persons from different parts of Africa and in different communities and hearing from them. So let's hear also from the 4 of you, what do you think is the hope that's in the midst of? Yes, we've raised the question that young people now are stepping up and being recognized, not just because they are a body and a person, but bring to the equation so much. What do you think is the hope that we can receive from this in-person and online scenario? They call it, the words are blended, I think it is. It's a both and scenario. What is the hope for us going forward? TC, let's hear from you, the hope going forward for you and your community and your vision.
Yeah, I think one, in terms of the borders for evangelism, the ability to reach further than we could have in person and physically, they're limitless. I think that's one thing the Lord has allowed to happen. I think this has been where we're at our sweetest spot in terms of evangelism as a church. We've had a lot of new people because it's so easy to evangelize. I mean, you can convince, it's easy to convince, to talk about the end of the world and all those things because of just for obvious reasons. So I think it's given us an opportunity for our people to share as well because of the ability of just social media, YouTube and different things to go further. So I think the biggest opportunity we've seen is evangelism. But also on the blended thing that you are talking about, just to realize that people are different, right? There's no one size fits all for everyone. So we do embrace the possibilities of technology, but we also recognize limitations in different in the lives of different people in our congregation and in our context. But I think the biggest thing for us has been the ability to just evangelize far and wide, because really online is a public square, right? It's not church. Everyone can walk into your church. Mm-hmm. So that's quite been helpful, and we've seen fruit in terms of the evangelization of people who didn't know about our church, who didn't know about us before, and all of a sudden we have ramped up our visibility in our heartland and our community.
Mm-hmm.
In Nairobi, have you found, for your own context, that more and more people, is it increasing the numbers week by week of those connecting in with you with your online forums and platforms?
Yeah, on different platforms, because I think online church is a moving target. What it is this week is not what it's going to be next week, right? So we have to see the different demographics and the different, right now we're really a data-driven church, right? Every week we have to go to different platforms and see who's consuming on our podcasts, on the different platforms, who consumes through WhatsApp, who does this. So it's not one capsule. It's really, really different, and every week is different. The time when, depending if the curfew, if the restrictions are tightened, that also impacts, the viewer behavior and et cetera, et cetera. So I can only speak about what's happening this week, because it feels like every week has a different dynamic, and there are many intervening variables that determine, that experience for us.
And Jackie, if I could come to you and just say, has yours been a similar experience of folk outside the borders of your community latching into your services? And have you seen also a varying of attendance and links into your platforms?
I really love the way TC said it's a variable moving target, because I think that is the reality. And, it's kind of like, what is driving us? Are we being driven by the data? Are we being driven by what's fundamental? So I think the thing, when we first started, we were wanting to produce a Sunday service. So we were driven to produce Sunday services across every single age group and in every single possible platform. That was like our main objective. And kind of now we're getting to the point of we're never going back to the way things were. And so instead of trying to just recreate the way things were, putting on various platforms that kind of look a little bit like church, here's an opportunity to rethink altogether. Because basically it's changing so rapidly. And you talk about how the lockdown moves. I mean, depending on what happens in the week, depending on what happens globally, it's literally a moving target. So certainly it is a platform for people that have left the community, living overseas. We're getting a lot of people connect in. But kind of bring us back to the question is, what is the purpose of the church? Why do we exist? And kind of almost back to the Great Commission. When Jesus takes these disciples and said, go into the world, that whole world now is beyond boundaries. So kind of like we're asking ourselves some deep questions and finding ways to respond. Just one of the things that one of the insights that we've had recently. So we hit the lockdown and we start producing content for our congregation and beyond. But what we realize is the content we've been creating for our children's church and has really been that it's driven to the hour or the hour and a half on a Sunday. And we realize that we've actually failed in providing the spiritual foundational element into the family life that really makes the parent or the caregiver the primary spiritual person in the shaping of a family system. So it's like, so we're driving to produce content and great video content for 13-year-olds, but the truth is the family as the nucleus for spiritual formation is not equipped. And we're getting a lot of feedback from parents to say they're struggling, they're doing homeschool, and all we're doing is just adding a layer. So we needed to revisit what we prepare and who we are as a church. So that's kind of some of the stuff, So I suppose for us, the biggest thing is it's driven us to the question, what is the purpose of the church? And it's also driven us to the levels of social justice. So what is the response of the church? And also, how do we remain connected? Like, what makes us church? Is it the building? Is it the Sunday that we actually drive to church? What actually makes us the church?
That's a good question, Jackie. Chris, we're glad that you've been able to reconnect with us. You're under the pseudonym Wilberforce Arnold at the moment. Not sure if I call you Wilberforce every now and again, just understand you have to forgive me. We've just been talking further on the same topic. And what is the hope that is coming through for the church at the moment? Would you like to add into that conversation? What's the hope that's coming through?
Yeah, I think, I don't want to overstate it, but I think this might be the biggest moment for the church since the Reformation, that we have an opportunity to galvanize a generation in a way that is just unprecedented in history. And, we talked about Africa being a young continent, and we have an opportunity to utilize gifts in a different way to bring people in. I think one of the things we've realized, and this has been our own kind of critique, has been that whilst we talk about being a whole week church, all of our budgeting, staffing, meetings, thinking, planning pointed towards a Sunday, and it pointed towards worship and word on a Sunday. And we've just been able to dismantle that and think more broadly about that. What contribution are we making in all kinds of areas across our city? And I think the other thing that we were careful, we tried to get away from, we wanted to make sure that, it felt like everyone else was doing church for people who already loved church. And what did it look like to begin to do church for those who struggle with it, or those who are finding it hard? Because all of a sudden, a massive barrier to engagement was taken away. They just had to flick on a screen or a device and check in to church. We run a ministry for sex workers in our city, and a couple of them have started checking in online because all of a sudden the church has become a safe space for people to check in online. And one of them said, "This is the nearest I've ever felt to a family."
Wow, that's a profound statement. Mohamoti, you want to add into that equation of the evolution and comments on what others have said?
Well, I think a lot of ground has been covered. I think for me, what this has opened really, it is to refocus us as the church on the mission, the very thing that we exist for, but also on evangelism. It's mission and evangelism, and then the third leg would be that of social justice. A big question that we have got to ask as the church going forward, it is that why is it that when we were under lockdown, the church was regarded as a non-essential service agent? And that has got us to think, really. And my submission is humbly that most probably we lacked social relevance in terms of our impact on mission, our ability for development, and therefore this says to us we've got to refocus one mission, but also then explore more robust ways of extending our evangelistic drive. And then the social justice aspect. We've got to look at those three things very carefully.
Thank you. I'm going to shift the gears now because the clergy normally have a spiritual gift of continuance, and we could continue for a very, very long time. And I'm now going to let those who are in the experts in the field, Brent and Kate, now to speak into the question of what's your advice to churches going forward, to foster an online and offline presence. What is your advice to us from your vast experience?
Brent, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. And typical timing, the family is now arriving home from the school run. So I apologize if the dogs and everyone goes nuts in the background. So welcome to lockdown work. I think in my experience, being in the mobile industry and specifically around video content, and what we found with a lot of our content partners, and particularly in the space that we played a lot with in the local South African market, which was in the band space and helping expose up-and-coming artists. Much like the church, bands literally had their livelihood stripped from them in a heartbeat. So we really put a big focus into what we did around helping them monetize their content. The fact that they could either produce their content at home in their garage or get involved in live stream. We were doing, I think we did about 250 live streams in the space of 4 weeks, just enabling people to expose their content to a broader audience. And I really do encourage you to do that. I said this before when we were having a chat with the relevant panelists, etc. It's also about finding how can you deliver content to someone in the most comfortable manner that they feel. So if someone doesn't have data, it's about being able to deliver content to them via SMS or utilizing UXSD. Or if people do have data and they've got internet access, it's how do you create that content that can also live outside of just one sermon that someone might be inspired about on a Sunday, but not be able to share that with someone that wasn't attending for that day. So it really is being able to create content that's got longevity in its approach and its ability to influence people's lives as well.
Thank you, Brent. My daughter is in the musical theatre industry, and literally the rug was pulled from underneath her. Yeah. And she runs an online thing called Plug in Theatre, where she was trying to create income streams for performers not being able to perform. And certainly the digital platform has created opportunities for us as a church to think outside of the box, as a Methodist minister myself, and in this space, you are asking, what has God created? And I love what TC said earlier. God in his creation mindset was giving us this opportunity. And we need to therefore look not just to the church for solutions, but to those who are experts in the field. And that is you. And so we are very grateful for that work that you've done for the general public, but also that which you will stretch us into now. So we'll come back to you, Brent. Thank you for that. Kate, would you like to pick up from there?
Yeah, I think that, something else that Brent and I also did beginning of lockdown is we looked at various content producers around COVID-19. Nobody knew what it was. Coronavirus, it had come from, somewhere east apparently, but did it. So to really find good sources. And so we were also able to actually help in terms of the education and sort of being able to use the mobile networks to sort of have bite-sized pieces of information, or how to keep how to keep mental health and how to be in a positive mood, or how to eat a little bit more healthily. So it wasn't only sort of COVID centric, but sort of the wider. So once again, looking at using our expertise, but how can we best support our community? So I think it's an amazing thing to be able to actually be able to do both. And so when it came to sort of us working with churches and working sort of in the religion realm, it was also, I remember as a child going to church and sermons, and the sermon would go on and on and on. But here now we've got the ability to create bite-sized chunks and keep, my mind would wander, and I realized I've missed half. So you can still go to church, but then come back and go, let me replay that. I know I missed a bit, or I didn't quite understand, or so once again, longevity and the fact that content can get played again and again in different scenarios. So yes, it is, you can keep the physical church offline and online working together in a remarkable way, and really engaging with your community. And I think it was, Chris Arnold said something earlier, and I think it's so true, is that, the focus was always Sunday and working from one Sunday to the next Sunday. Here you get 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And more than what's mass, 50 to 60 minutes. And you could actually get more and be with people more than just 50 minutes once a week.
Very important questions and comments. Thank you for that. So let's move into this more dynamic conversation between those who are so-called clergy, ministers in the church, and those who are using digital platforms. So we're asking, how can we do the both and? And I would like to just come to Chris and ask you and TC, and then to Mokhomotsi and Jackie to say, how have you been doing the both and? We in South Africa are still trying to discover what it is to do a both and. So we'd like to learn as much as we can from those who are highly skilled in this space. And I use the word highly skilled in inverted commas because I know what you're going to say. We are all in a learning space. But Chris, jump into us. Have you done the both and, the blended, in-person, online?
Yeah, so we've we could have met back as a full church, and we intentionally said, you know what, I don't think we should. And there was a kind of philosophical decision that the thing God taught us during the season was that we'd failed to do community well. And I think the thing that resonated most loudly with us was, you guys think because you're accessible, you're friendly, you're pretty hip, you wear skinny jeans, that all of a sudden you're a community, and you're not. And just God kept hitting this drum with us to say, you need to learn how to do community really well, that's deep, that is bearing one another's burdens, that is walking with others, that is sharing possessions, that is sharing hospitality with those far from God. Having coffee after church does not constitute community. And so actually what we've decided to do is what we're calling pop-up church. And instead of having 100, 150 attending our different services, we have 30 to 40 that are attending a whole bunch of services across our city. And we're doing community style services. And we have a blend of some online content at those services. And we have physical kind of worship if we can, and different pieces. And just trying to, I think we've tried to make permanent decisions be as flexible as possible. So not just lurch from one week to another. We've gone, okay, guys, this is the road we're on. But actually, in a few weeks' time, we might decide it's a rubbish road and try something else, and be okay with that. And one of our elders said recently, those who learn to live with dislocation will win in the next decade. And I think learn to live with how we change things around is really important, and just not getting locked into something. So we just found being able to play around with stuff, try, see what works, and go, this is the ideal opportunity for the church to be entrepreneurial in the way it does its activities, because we can't do church the way we've been doing it. So there's no other options.
Wow. Chris, you have amazing insights, and so grateful for that. You know, you've made some radical decisions, but your insights are phenomenal. I really appreciate that. TC, do you want to jump in and add to that?
Yeah, I think what's important in the blended thing, I think the first important is just how we're thinking, right? Like what Chris mentioned earlier on what they learned in the process, what we have to look back, and correct certain things. There's a quote, someone said, it's not the most, polite things to say, but Warren Buffett said that when the tide goes out, you will know who was swimming naked, right? So I think there's a way in which the tide went out, and a lot of our nakedness was exposed in how we were doing things. So I think we really have to retrospectively look at that and areas that we need to correct as a body of Christ. But secondly, I think we also need to make sure that we don't become prisoners of the moment, right? The Bible has everything we need for faith and for practice. The Bible has not been disrupted. There are things that are still essential. Worship is essential, fellowship, church, and all these things. We shouldn't be embarrassed that the Bible didn't anticipate the moment we're in. So we're trying to navigate this moment with our cleverness and forget the essentials that the Bible has already given. So, and then sometimes when you stick to these things, you know, all of us have gone through the cycle of when we started, everyone was excited, and then the numbers start dipping. I mean, I've had videos where I know it's just my wife and kids watching, you know.
3 times.
And you're tempted to be, to be discouraged because we're also not thinking about what has been exposed. What is it that we have not taught people all this time that's being exposed right now? So there's a need to just have a faithful presence because we have to still realize that God is at work online, and we still have to have the presence of God as we have that online presence, so that we just don't approach it with thinking that technology is an innate power within itself. So we forget some of the essential things that we need to approach this prayerfully, present, and one long direction, obedience in one direction, as long as we're doing the essentials, the fellowship and creativity, because of the temptation of quick results, right? I think I needed to mention that. But secondly, I think we made the decision to open on Sundays for those who are able to attend, but we are also streaming. Our services are streamed online, but throughout the week, we are making sure that we have multiple ways in which we're making contact. From Monday to Saturday every night, if any person in our church goes online, they can find a community group that's either meeting online or that's meeting in person. So that's what we have, that hybrid. But the bigger battle is just in how we're thinking and having a faithful presence, because also what's happening, right, is we're not thinking about, I mean, the people were, a lot of our members, because we're not taught them about the price of community and staying on for a long time. So Sundays, you find that a lot of people will move to Steve Furtick's or Mike Todd's church because it's got a better production than yours. But we've got to teach this thing, and we've got to have a faithful presence, on an enduring presence online, as long as we're saying we're doing what the Bible instructs us to do for ministry, for life, and different things.
Thank you, TC. You know, all of us have watched something over the last 6 months, and what is the feeling that we have as we are engaging with stuff that's on the screen? And I have come away from some of them feeling an authentic encounter with God. And if that's what worship is, then I've experienced that. Even though I don't have no connection to the actual person, but the Spirit of God has transcended the geography, distinction, and technology, and but used that moment in a profound sense. And it's that we need to be aspiring to. It's not necessarily about professionalism, though that does help. So here's a question. So thank you, TC. Fantastic. Jackie, particularly of you. You said, and you said in these words, you are never going back to the way things were. What did you once do, and what are you going to change, and what is the new normal for you?
So, you know, I suppose one of the questions we start asking ourselves, you know, what is the real church? Like, is the real church, because we're working with a blended model at the moment. We're back-to-back, face-to-face with registrations. We have around 120 up to 150 people in the space, because that's what we feel that we can accommodate well. And then we obviously stream it onto different platforms and then regenerate the content through the week. And you kind of say, well, what is the real church? When is it, in fact, the real church? So you see, we have like a sense as ministers, the real church happens at your 8:15, that is for us, or your 10 o'clock service. So like that's then real church, you know. And so, you know, how do you experience as a person coming to church the real moment of church? So it's kind of, that's the stuff that we're working with at the moment. Like when is it real? And for us, it's all real. I think I think, Chris, you said it, this is the greatest opportunity since the Reformation, and I would absolutely agree with that. It is so revolutionary this time that it gives us such potential for the gospel and evangelism. So kind of for us, it's just, we're looking for real all the time. I just wanted to just pick up on something that Kate spoke about earlier on, and people have been talking about content. You know, as ministers, we get to often preach, or we used to get to preach in our churches, anything from 20 to a couple of hundred, you know, or maybe thousands. What we didn't always counter for is that everything we do is being recorded by somebody now, which is kind of like, it's a whole revolutionary change, because nothing is hidden. Like you talk about it, Brooks, it's online. I do funerals, they're online, and people watch. So people are consuming what we say. And I think this is like a wake-up call for the church, because it's on there. It's there. It lives forever. When you talk about your good sermons live forever and your bad sermons live forever, and we don't want to hear that. People that, you know, and we know what that feels like. So it's kind of, you know, we are producing something that lives forever. So why did we need the shake-up to think about what we say and what we do? But it kind of has done that for us, you know. So
thank you, Jackie. That's insightful. I want to ask a question of Brent, and that is, you have children. We saw one or two of them walking behind. How can we foster engagement with youth and children? And you've obviously been in that space. Give us some insights.
We can develop a Christian PlayStation game, and then you got my son hooked. I think it's being able to communicate with them on their level. If I compare my kids to my mom on the other side of the spectrum, my mom, as I mentioned prior to this meeting starting, my mom learned how to use Zoom for the first time during the pandemic, due to the fact that was the way we could communicate with extended family. Kids today are from a young age exposed to YouTube. If I look at the way we consumed television back when we grew up, it was sitting down and it was having dinner and watching a particular episode on TV. Nowadays, kids, they don't know what an advert is nowadays, because They follow their favorite YouTube channel or their favorite personality. And it's really being able to create content that connects with kids on that level as well. If I look at my own personal experience, I have been involved in the church for some time. I've probably on the other side of the spectrum, where I presume there are a lot of people like this out in the world. I don't necessarily go to church every Sunday, but I still want to connect with my church, and I still want to connect with my community. And lockdown has really helped ourselves as a family reconnect with the church, because now we have the ability to tune in on a Sunday or during the week to catch up with the sermon or the message that has been portrayed on a particular any given time. Also, TC mentioned earlier on that you might have just had his family tuning in the one day, but you never also know who is going to pass that item of content on. And you just needed to get in the right hands for that item of content to go viral as well. And the ability to then utilize that content to empower a lot of people. And I suppose, yeah, going back to the whole how I can influence, how children can be influenced by the content, etc. It's also like the pandemic has also showed us as well, like you don't have to have people sitting in four walls to be part of the community. People engage, people follow different styles of preaching, different people, and they will latch onto that. And that's what my kids have exposed me to. They will watch content in a genre that they want to consume. And I think going online from a church perspective, it gives someone the ability to now engage and follow the people that they want to follow, and not necessarily the local church, which is just down the road or around the corner for them.
Thank you, Greg. I want to pop a question now to Mokhomotsi, building up on a conference that was held a while back on the Fourth Industrial Revolution and how it engages with the church. And Mokhomotsi, you were at that and one of the keynote presenters at that. Would you like to give us some insights, because that's engaging the conversation between the church and technology?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. Look, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is upon us, indeed, and it is beginning to influence the way we think, as we've been saying. But what came out of that conference was clearly that the fact that starting from the way we train those that are our agents or leaders, pastors and ministers, has got to be different, because we have been so used to preachers. But with the development of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, machines taking over, robotics, and the whole issue of just unemployment growing and economy struggling, there is going to, and it is already happening, there is a growing trend of mental health illness. And as the church, then, we cannot then respond to that by creating more preachers. We've got to look at our training and ask the question, can't we begin then to look at having more trained counselors than local preachers in terms of the Methodist language, so that we are then able to have more foot soldiers who will be able to connect with people on a one-to-one basis. That is one thing. The second thing it is that, my contribution in that conference, I asked a question and the question was, if the church was a business, in which sector would it fall? And it is clear for me that if we were a business, we would fall in the communication and marketing business or education, training, and development space. Communication and marketing, because of our evangelistic need or need for evangelism, and therefore all the technologies that are helping business to communicate, to do marketing and all that. We need to then look at what the Fourth Industrial Revolution is producing in that space, to then take those to help us to communicate our messages, our message even further. And with regard to education and training space as well, we need more teachers, again, than preachers. And therefore, that is what is coming for the church. We need more counselors, we need more teachers, we need more facilitators, we need more people that are going to be able to care. But the other big thing that is opening up for us in terms of our mission outlook is how do we then move from a welfare mission to a developmental mission, where we will do skills training, human development, and just actively participating in the area of economic development as the church. And then those are the areas where we are being led. We're having situation with Holy Communion right now, isn't it? And just yesterday, I had to go through a laborious process of explaining to the church how we are now going to give communion. Robots might very well in future help us in serving and distributing Holy Communion. And it is a possibility that we might want to think about. How do we then get into the robotic space? And let me hold on there. Yeah.
Thank you, Mohamotsi. One of the interesting things is that, I lecture at the University of Pretoria, and the students have really been challenged this year. And one of the huge disparities is accessibility to the internet and data that's so expensive in our particular context. One of my students is an honors student, and he has to travel 20 kilometers to Soshanguve to an internet cafe to be able to do all his engagement with all his assignments, and we do Zoom tutorials every week and so on. He's done exceptionally well. He's not let geography technology from the Urkse denomination, but he's done his work outstandingly well. But it raised the question in one of my wife's webinars around affordability of Wi-Fi, and we need to raise that as a big question, data, et cetera, and that's a big factor. And so we'll come back to and ask Kate around that. But Chris Arnold, we have a question directed at you. One of the students that have been journeying with me through this year did her assignment on pop-up churches around Pretoria, and they have a number of pop-up churches, and so I'm learning about pop-up churches. How are you doing pop-up churches? Explain that to us.
Probably badly, but we're trying. We're basically the concept was nothing more than, hey, let's foster a sense of community. And it's old kind of Pete Wagner's language about community, congregation, and celebration. And that his sense was that we've lost something about congregation and the way that it interacts as a body of people over the last generation or so, where we've majored on community groups, home groups, whatever you want to call them, and mass celebrations on a Sunday, and something about the life of the banquet table that we see Jesus around missing in the middle of that. So kind of this idea that, hey, let's start hanging out, doing life together and doing church together. And the things we have seen in that space, I've seen more people prayed for in pop-up church than I've seen in our normal services. And this isn't like, I love big church, and I love it when there are hundreds there and they say, hey, Chris, you're a rubbish preacher. I love all of that. But I think we were just kidding ourselves that we could do everything in that moment. And actually what we needed to do was do some relearning as a church, that there are other things other than great worship and great word on a Sunday. And I think the last generation and a half has majored on, let's get great production quality into our Sunday morning services. And the collateral damage of that has been, we've forgotten what it means to be the body of Christ. And we've got to relearn that, I think, in this generation, that we might be the body, not just on a Sunday, because I think God's over that. I think we've got to get out there on a Monday and start living like the people of God, that we might see his kingdom come in our cities and our nations.
One of the things that the student highlighted is that they move around to different restaurants and they respect the restaurant by having a meal. I think this is very much like the Salvation Army, that every meal is some form of sacrament. And then the word is brought, and then around the table, disciple making happens. and they do it in different restaurants at different times and so on. I mean, administratively, that's quite a huge challenge in organization if you're in relocating all the time. But the understanding is we're taking the church to where the people are, not asking the church to come to us. We are missional in going to where the people are. I want to just add a little extra thing in here. Leon Lopsha, would you just wave your hand for a moment, please? That's Leon. Leon did a workshop with us earlier on how to do the video and recording scene better. And maybe you want to latch in with that particular recording of that to learn from his amazing expertise and insights into lighting and sound and all that kind of stuff. So you'll have to go to the Inner Creative website and learn from that and see how to upskill yourselves in that space, because Leon's insights have helped. Apologies, Leon, that I've not learned everything that I should have learned from your workshop. I'm a work in progress, so thank you for that. But Kate, we're now in your hands. Really just want to ask you to explain to us how the My Faith Hub can facilitate re-engaging the world and Africa particularly in this era and season.
Oh, it's quite a question. So yeah, I mean, look, I think what 2020 has gotten us to sort of realize is big changes, and I very much doubt we're going to go back to a lot of what we were doing, previously. I think digital online churches is here to stay. And I think that by creating a faith hub and sort of how, those of us that have already had conversation around it and around this particular project is by bringing a faith community together and being able to actually connect to, and this is coming up a lot, is not only on Sunday, is to be able to have, churches, their communities, sort of individuals, no matter where they are, being able to tap into a particular pastor, a particular church, a particular nomination, and it's endless. It's a safe space. Yes, we're many churches are live streaming via Facebook and other platforms, but you kind of got to wade through everything to sort of find what it is that you're looking for. Whereas if you've got one platform that is hosting and holding our church, our greater church communities, you sort of know, when you're diving in to, okay, right, this is who I want, this is what I want. And the fact that it's then accessible 24/7. For the churches to have a greater say in sort of the content that they're creating and putting out there, and really being able to engage with their community and others. For as and when travel opens up, if I'm going away for a 3-4 week business trip, to still be able to engage with my church community is fantastic, rather than losing me for 4 weeks. And creating bite-sized content that people can, sort of tap in first thing in the morning before they've even put on their work clothes. On a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and not just Sunday. So I think there's a fantastic opportunity to really bring and take our faith into the much wider community, and maybe engage and re-engage with those that have kind of lapsed, or to those who feel that they'll be, that they will not be welcome because of maybe a particular lifestyle or whatever it might be. It's about creating a safe space for everybody and to be able to spread the word.
Thank you for that. The safe place. I was listening to one of the stories given by Nikki Gumbel, who was talking about the use of alpha in the online space. And he was saying, obviously one can do the talk and presentation and then that kind of space. But they found an increased number of people who are willing to engage with the Christian faith because they found it safe to do so in the online platform, because they could ask the questions they wanted to. That if they felt awkward, they could just press the end session button. They didn't have to have the awkward thing of picking up their belongings and walking out the room. They just could, engage, and therefore the depth of conversation transcended what would have happened in an in-person thing. But alpha is going in person and online, and the one mustn't simply exclude the other. But there is a vital opportunity for us to take what has already happened through the platforms the churches have used, and through the My Faith Hub, make it available to a wider audience. And that's the question today about, we've had this box idea, as Chris has mentioned, of church, and even church is the hour and a half or whatever on a Sunday, and our clergy centricity has been challenged. And clergy centricity is close to, it's idolatry, because we're worshiping a person. And the only person we should be worshiping is Jesus. And it's lifting our eyes to see that the engagement of technology lifts us into the space where we keep pointing towards Jesus. Now, Brent, here's a question for you. You got yourself into this. It's your own fault. But how can VR help churches reach the Xbox generation?
Yeah, I think as Kate also said, it's about connecting with people. The great thing about the project that we've been in communication with regards to Faith Hub, it's about developing a platform that resonates across age groups as well. I refer back to my mom. It could be something as simple as someone learning how to get onto a Zoom call, or our kids that educate us on all the new technologies that are coming out on a daily basis. And it's taking learnings from those and wrapping it up into, as Kate mentioned, a safe space, a safe environment that someone that is techno savvy can navigate themselves around, and that someone that is on the other end of the spectrum also feel like they can engage with content that they are comfortable with. So yeah, I think if I look also at what I do in my day-to-day business, for the viewers out there that don't know, I'm heavily involved in the mobile video space with telcos. And it's also being able to engage with content creators within the Faith Hub, and taking content and also putting it into the video portals that we've got throughout the African continent, and also help churches monetize that content as well. I think that's quite an important opportunity just to put on the table. We run video portals in South Africa with the big telcos, Vodacom and MTN. We are building the official video portal for Safaricom in Kenya. We're rolling out into MTN Nigeria, Ghana, Rwanda, Botswana. And there are definite opportunities of taking this well-created content from the safe space and also helping the broader church community monetize that content and get their content out there to also people that might not be coming to consume their content on an online platform or between four walls, so to speak.
Now, taking it from you, Brent, and back to Kate, this is a very ecumenical platform. And just your take on what that means in terms of gathering and putting that into the platform. What would that look like? Are you going to say this is a Catholic thing, or is this, how are you working that? Because methylated spirits or whatever else, where are you? I'm teasing my own denomination by saying that, how are we working that? Because one of the things that's great even about this conversation is we trans-denominational, we trans-geographical, we even transgender or whatever else, but we're just rising above the borders, so-called. How is that going to work within the My Faith Hub?
And I think it's very, thank you. I think it's very, very important for us, and it's a personal view, for us to create unity and to be, and also to learn from one another, you know. And once again, it's a personal view. I like, you know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and let's see what, and then put it together and have a much rounder view. But and Brent, help me out here in terms of the actual text structure. We do appreciate that not everybody has that view. So I think that our view will be to, if you wish to have a bit of a smorgasbord, you can, but at the same time, actually break it into segments, you know, and not only sort of the top line being Methodist, but actually then break it into area, then break it right down to the actual church itself. Because you might find somebody in Cape Town from, you know, who originally is from Joburg, who really, really, really likes a particular minister at Bedford View. And, you know, no matter where they're living in the country or on the continent or in the world, they want to hear that particular minister. So it will be having its various layers, drop downs as to how granular you as a viewer wish to be. Am I sort of right in my explanation, Brent?
No, for sure. If you take the Facebook analogy, I suppose people can go and create fan pages or groups, etc., that people can join, and that doesn't mean you have to be part of one particular group. You could have groups from across denomination, etc. So very much so. It's all about packaging the content and giving people the ability to surf and find their way around the content that they want to follow. Be it a particular pastor, a particular church, a particular religious sector.
The ecumenical space is a very important one. I was just trying to break down, you know, the set of algorithms that you only get fed on YouTube, those things that you have selected, and then you only get fed a theology that, you know, just validates your own biased perspective. And the beauty of an ecumenical space, from my perspective, is that you get to hear the whole. You know, it's the whole gospel to the whole person in the whole world, you know, and it really is a powerful thing to be ecumenical. So I'm going to throw that open to the clergy. Let's start with you, Jackie. Your take on how this can be used in the ecumenical space. What do you think, Jackie?
Hi, thank you so much. You know, I think one of the things that I think churches, I think ministers, denominations, we're really driven by our differences rather than the things that actually bind us together. And I think the one thing that COVID has done is that everybody has experienced the impact of COVID. So it's kind of to get over our sense of what are our differences rather to a sense of what are the things that we share in common. I was going to give you one little experience that we had. So we started something called Hot Topics. We got a whole group of young people together, and they basically started just gathering together around hot topics. And you can imagine we were dealing with hot topics and kind of created quite a lot of energy. And what we found from that is that in itself has actually brought about an incredible ecumenical movement. The online space, maybe it's because you're not walking into a church that says, I'm suddenly arriving in a Methodist church or an NK church or an independent church, that you're actually not physically present in a space, that you feel a little bit more at ease, that it kind of allows for more, for a generous way in which we deal with one another. So it's kind of like, it's an even ground space. Because I think that sometimes, you know, if we're really honest about churches and kind of even in our ecumenical conversations, some of us still think that our theology beats your theology, or you know, it kind of, you know, we mark the fact that we're 500 years past Reformation, and you know, they're like 1050 now. We kind of got these important dates that kind of reflect our sense of being, and kind of, you know, some of the independent churches feel like they're way ahead of you know, what we might call mainline denominational churches. So we speak a lot from a comparative basis, whereas here it's like there are less things that speak to our power and more things that speak to the possibility. So I think that the platform invites engagement. And suddenly we've found, certainly from our hot topics discussion, that all of a sudden everyone is engaging, and it's cuts across the board. It's not owned by anybody. So it's kind of, let's not own the stuff, and maybe even own the content. That's why I love the idea that of kind of generating a platform where we can look at content. We've been looking at this for a while at Grace Point, but to kind of generate the volume of content that can monetize it, Brent and Kate, it's massive. You need massive viewership that can get you a monetized, you know, a monetized platform. The whole point is, how do we just take what we've got and share together? It is an amazing opportunity to share. And I think that that's where the possibility lies. We can actually share and actually share with each other. So that's kind of, for me, it's not, we don't have it sorted out, certainly not in the Methodist Church, certainly not at Grace Point, but actually together we can figure it out.
Thank you for that fantastic insight. One of my friends in Cape Town said, we are spoiled for choice. And so he gets into, with his family, into the local church one, and faithful to his local church. But then he says, because the service is only 35 minutes, he then has space in his day to engage with other communicators who feed into his spirituality. And that's fantastic, because it means that we, and I, to be honest, if you're in a church service for an hour and a half, you say, I'm done with church for the day, you know. But here you're at home, you don't have to drive there and back or whatever else. You have the opportunity to have multiple places of input. So thank you for that. And it really is, you know, a real affirmation of the oneness of Christ. Now, Chris, we're coming to you. You had a technical question of the tech people. Will you jump in and take us there? Are you with us?
Yeah. There's just a question that came up from our team around the monetizing thing, and they just my team came to me, because I get excited about ideas, so I've already gone, and they said, but what about kind of you know, aren't we making it charging people to access content when we want to make our content free? Like, we want to push everything out free. And I just wanted to know from like the technical side, and what kind of how do you respond to that sort of question?
I suppose if I look at it in my day-to-day workings, like content that we curate, and some of it comes from Kate, some of it comes from other content partners. There is a lot of content that's out there for free. A lot of, if we look at what the telcos are doing in the space, there is an absolute need from, for example, Safaricom in Kenya to have their own video destination portals. The telcos are charging people to consume that content. All I'm saying is it's the ability to take that content and curate it with other content that we've already got and give you the ability to monetize that content. You want to have your content positioned wherever someone is consuming that content. And for someone in Safaricom or South Africa, the only place they might know to consume content is on Pocket TV, one of our portals, or Safaricom TV in Kenya. You want that content to be positioned wherever you can. And if you have the ability to monetize that content within that environment, it's an opportunity that I wouldn't let go. If you look at YouTube, for example, a lot of content gets monetized by advertising that's put on the portals. It's just different ways of how you monetize that content. All content is going to be monetized one way or the other. And rather just have the ability to position your content where you can benefit from it. And also that might be someone's way of tithing into your church by supporting that content. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Kate, you want to add into that?
No, I absolutely agree. And I suppose then the other, you know, carry on with it, is being able to monetize the content. You then can feed it back into the church, which then helps you grow and support your community. And you know, and it just sort of, you know, keeps on flowing in and flowing out. You know, for those of us in our church, and you know, we put our money in the basket that gets you know, passed around in the service. You know, it's a kind of the same thing, but you know, be able to monetize it, and you know, being able to at the same time position it on such great and multiple platforms, I don't think is a bad thing. I don't think there's anything, you know, one should be feeling that it's wrong or one should be ashamed of. It just helps us develop more content within the church community.
Thank you for those questions. The question always is going to be for those who are, in a sense, uneasy with the technology space, because it's a new environment. And that which is in a building where people are face-to-face is slightly more controllable, and we know who our people are. And then those are the people who would give, and so on. And the pandemic has had ripple effect across, you know, across countries, but also into particular individuals' lives, as well as church communities, and affordability of institutions and so on. These are questions which are not for us to answer here. But the question always will be, how do we make sure that we remain economically viable? I'm not sure we're going to be able to tease that out in any depth here at all. But these are questions that have to be asked. How do we keep the ministry going? You know, what is a tent-making ministry that Paul had look like in the modern context? What does bivocational ministry look like, et cetera, et cetera? How do we engage the question of clergy and lay people and so on? I was in a webinar yesterday, and one of the lay folk in the conversation has been a missionary in Thailand and so on, and not an ordained person, but is a missional person in Cape Town doing amazing work. And so we as clergy need to understand that our role is changing in this space as well. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? And so one of the churches that we've been engaged with, their children's pastor is doing as much input into the lives of people as the senior pastor, whatever that is, because there are just different levels of need. And we need to then ask that, how do you monetize that? What does that look like if children are going to use this a lot more, et cetera, et cetera. So there are things that relate to that particular question. We have a few minutes left, and I would like to just ask the question of each of the panel folk as we begin to think of wrapping up in the next 10 or so minutes. The question is, what advice would you give to congregations who are still starting this journey? You've had 6-7 months of learning in this space. What are the 2, 3, 4 nuggets that you would like to share with folk who are coming into the space? Because the new normal for us is slightly more tangible than for those who are slightly behind in the equation. How can we take hands with them along the journey? So let's jump in. TC, would you like to jump in? What nuggets would you like to share with new folk coming into the space now?
Yeah, I think one on how they should think and what they should do. So in terms of how they should think, I think my first, what I'd say is that the local church has not been disrupted. It could be how we are doing it, and it's still, you know, God's only agency in the world. I mean, the New Testament has no context for a Christian who's not in church, whatever that looks like, whether it's pop-up, whether it's 3 people or 4 people. I think we need to keep that fundamental truth there. And even in terms of salvation experience, right? We have a generation that thinks salvation is like a KFC meal or a Nando's meal or chicken in meal. Well, you can just have, you know, 1-piece chicken, no salad and no chips, right? So I think I can have Jesus, but not his community and not his mission, right? Just Jesus alone. that there's no Christianity like that. That once salvation includes Jesus, his mission, and his people. So you've got to think that that's not been disrupted. That's got to be a north point, right? That even in how we are moving. And then the second thing there is just to think, at least in my part of the world, the mineral water, the water bottle we have has an expiry date. The expiry date is not for the water, it's for the container that holds the water. So we've got to always think about the container, right? That the message, same, and my faith hub is one of the containers that God is using in this season. Because they say, like when the Bible says in the fullness of time, Christ came, there were already technologies that Christ could easily use for his message. I think the last thing that I'll say is just keep learning. Find a church that's down the road, that's close, that are down the road in terms of this journey, and learn from them. Learn and do legal plagiarism, right? You don't need to invent anything. I tell my team that, creativity is the art of concealing your sources. That's what creativity is. Learn, find out what's working, start small, but never, become complacent. Just because, every week is different. You just keep learning. I think that the biggest thing is just to keep learning, but you can't ignore the moment that we're in right now. Just the digital migration, it is real, and this is the container that God is using in this moment. I think without organizing my thoughts too quickly, that's what I would say.
Those are brilliant thoughts. And those chicken nuggets from KFC, we'll take away from that. Okay. All right. Chris, we're into you. The nuggets that you can share with others.
Thanks, Chris. I think first I'd say be gentle on yourself. I've seen so many people beat themselves up over this. This is not an event. This is a process. And we need to be okay with that, walking in and through that. I think the other thing I'd add is be honest about what real measures of success are. I don't know about you guys, I think I've been lulled into thinking that online success meant that I went viral. That all of a sudden, everyone was into my content, everyone was downloading it, was just going everywhere. I don't think it does. I think online success means we play our role in the kingdom of God as he has asked us to in our space. And we have an opportunity to make people known and seen in the unique space that we are called to be. I don't think we're there just to G people up. Those people already love our church. They're going to love your church anyway. And if our aim is to give brilliant worship experience, they'll go and check out Bethel or Hillsongs or Elevation or whatever. And if you don't believe me, just go and ask your church. But I think the hope is to regain an authentic sense of what it means to equip people for a place and a time. And we are all located in a unique place and time and setting. And we know that better than anyone else. We know our context better than anyone else. So we can offer that to people. You know the quote, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. So there's that quote, what would Jesus do, that everyone kind of used. It's really unhelpful because we're not Jesus. And he would do something extravagant. But what would Jesus do if he were me is a really good question. And we begin to ask that question of what would Jesus do if he were me in our context, in our time, to serve our community and serve our generation? Because the people that you do want to reach in that space, guess what? They're online. So you just have to figure out what that looks like. And I think finally, be prayerful about this. God cares about your church way more than you do. So get close to him in this and lean into him. That would be what I'd offer.
Thank you. Before we come to you, Mohamotsi, and then to Jackie, one of the things that I have experienced, you talk about those in the older generation. I'm 60 plus, so just to understand, you don't be too discriminating of those who are moving towards their 95. My father is 93 and is still going, so we understand I'm still young. But the point is that I'm trying to make here is no matter what age we are still at university. We're still at school. We are in the game of learning. And if a disciple is a learner, then we are learning new things every day. And trying to do things online and so on means that I've got to go and to do YouTube stuff. I've got to do lessons. I've got to learn from another. And it's a humbling thing when you say, I'm a professional. And so, oh, hang on a moment. You know, I lectured at the university. Now I've got to do everything differently. Everything was different. Even online exams, everything is different. And so understand that we are in the stage of learning. And it's to keep that childlike mindset. Oh, wow, I can learn a new thing today. And that's key for me. And Chris, you've hit the nail on the head when you say that. And that's a hugely humbling thing, but it's a wonderful gift. Okay, Mokhomotsi, we're into you. What are the nuggets that you can share with others who are new in this journey?
Chris, I think the time in which we are, for me, the key thing is to realize that we are in a time of convergence.
Can you talk a bit louder, Mokhomotsi?
Oh, okay. Let me take this out. I was saying we need to realize that we are in a time of convergence and complementing rather than competing. With the unfortunate thing about our global world, it is that we have been oriented, particularly by the capitalist system, to be a competitive space. And therefore, we see our survival depending on the demise of the other. The gift of COVID-19, which is in alignment with the gospel, it is the fact that we are all of the same kingdom, and therefore there is strength in us working together. Churches are not at the same level. There are struggling churches, there are surviving churches, there are thriving churches. And the power of the moment at which we are is for me to realize, for instance, if my church is able, for instance, to get a camera that is of good quality and cables, and there is a Lutheran church or some ministry 2 houses away or 2 blocks away, it will not weaken my ministry or my witness for me to be able to lend my camera to the Lutheran church so that they are able to establish their own platform whilst the resources are not there yet. And this is the convergence I am talking about. The second thing is for us to then say, this is the moment of creativity. We are getting into the decade where those that are going to make it are those that are going to allow the creative juices to flow. And therefore, let us not shy away from being ridiculous, so to speak, in terms of our imagination, because it is in that space of being ridiculous and being out of the box space that new ideas will come into this thing. Let us share resources, let us converge, and let us work together. And that way, we do not need to really be too overly concerned of our own existence. People who are loyal, like Chris said, people who are loyal to your particular denomination will still support your denomination, but they will check what Chris is doing, what TC is doing, what whoever is doing. So we need to learn that assertiveness and just being secure.
Good points there. Thank you, Mokhomotsi. And you, Jackie?
I think, the first thing I'd like to say is just like the famous Nike statement, just do it, just start. I think one of the things, it's such a daunting place to begin with. And it's so hard to start because you look at everybody so far ahead and you think, oh my goodness, I'm never going to be able to catch up, and I think that's just the wrong place to start. I did a service and I didn't have the camera going in the right direction and I was upside down. And it was a really important service. And we streamed it online and it went onto all our platforms and it was upside down. And I didn't only do one like this, I think I managed to do 3 until I figured out how to not be upside down. And I think it's just do it and actually accept the faults and the mistakes along the line, but just start. I think it's like, don't worry about how far the next person is or what you're not able to do, just start, just begin. I think the other thing that I like to say is kind of take notes. I think we'll miss this opportunity if we don't actually figure out what we're learning about ourselves, what we're learning about each other, and take the notes along the way. Because I remember, like, the 15th of March seems so long ago, and I kind of take notes because we're going to forget what we're busy learning. We're going to forget how we feel. We're going to forget our experiences. So just take notes, because we're going to need a record to come back to. I think this is a great opportunity to write church history. This is our history, so take notes.
Yes,
The other thing
yes.
I wanted to say is, like, don't stop. You can get so discouraged along the way. It's like you look at those views, or you just get tired and there's a fatigue. So you just think, I'm going to stop. Like, don't stop. Just push through. Just keep pushing through, because it's kind of, don't be defeated and don't stop. Even no matter what stops you, just don't stop. I think it's such an exciting time. So, there's always this threat on Zoom Church that we're going to have porno hit the scene. I don't know if you guys ever know about that, but that's like such a big threat. It's happened on churches. And it's like, we're going to get weird stuff happen. So that's okay. I think the weirder, the better. We've been so stayed so long in church. It's like, let's get weird about it. So let's just not stop. I kind of also wanted to say that I think we need to be real. Let's just be real. Let's be real with ourselves. Let's be real with God. Let's actually not forget the basics, because at the end of the day, none of us trained for this. Certainly as ministers, we didn't train for this. But it's like, if we can be real, that this is pretty tough along the way. And I want to say the one thing that kind of really resonates for me: be kind. Because this, the bottom line is that they're going to be churches that are going to come out of this. They're going to be stronger because they basically took market share. Okay. And they're going to be churches that close down at the end of this. And the truth is, how you are during this run is not about what you can achieve, but it's who you are. And if we're kind and gracious in this time, that's in fact the gospel living out. So it's like, who we are in this time really speaks about who Jesus is in our lives.
Thank you, Jackie. Wonderful insights. Now, Brent, and then Kate, as we begin to wrap up, any nuggets from you would like to place in our laps?
I'm still stuck on having some Nando's with TC. But my biggest nugget is just breathe. It's not as daunting as it is, and if you just take that step back and breathe, you can achieve anything. And I also just said, enjoy this time in our lives, because although we're going through a pandemic, like on my personal space, I've had the ability to connect with my kids in a phenomenal way, connect with my wife, etc., connect with my friends. If I look at the Zoom calls I've had on a Friday afternoon with friends, I felt more connected to some of those people from all over the world. So enjoy this time in our life, because it will define our future, and it will define the work that you guys are doing as well, in the way that you communicate with your communities. And then I just said, be positive. People are going to gravitate towards you if you're positive. Like, stamp out the negativity. We're going through a pandemic. It's terrible. It's horrible. But if you're positive and you look for the good in everything, we have the ability to change the world.
Wow. Was that a 3-point sermon that I just heard, Brent?
Like I said, Nando's can do wonders there.
And last but not least, Kate, we're in your hands. Your thoughts, nuggets.
Collaborate, which is a great word that I love using, and this year has been amazing for that, and that actually ask, collaborate, lend your camera to the Lutheran church next door, and it's collaboration community. So look at what others are doing, but really do not be scared to ask. The likes of, Robin and Inner Voice and the support that she is giving and will continue to give our sort of faith communities throughout the continent is invaluable. And it's all about helping our neighbors. And I think that to be able to share ideas and to get together and help one another, what a wonderful opportunity. So I think that's what, for me, collaboration, and as others have said, just start. The great thing about going digital is also that the best sort of digital, best sort of content, especially if you're looking at mobile networks, etc., is bite size. So it's not as daunting then if you only have to create a 5-minute, a 10-minute, as opposed to an entire 50-minute service. So just start small and just get onto that first step. You don't have to look at the top of the ladder. Just look at the first rung and take it from there.
Thank you, Kate. Wonderful insights. I was chatting with Professor Stefan de Beer, and I was using the word kingdom of God, because we're too church-centric. And I was saying we need to have a kingdom of God perspective. And he looked at me deeply and he said, that phrase is problematic. So I said, I agree. It's very monarchical. It's very, hierarchical or whatever else, geographical, whatever. And he just said, so I said to him, what word would you choose to use better than that? He said, God's new community. Wow. What we have had for the last hour and a half is God's new community. And understand sharing things together, collaboration at this level. So I just want to tell a quick story, give it 30 seconds. We've been without electricity for 4 days. Something blew up, something happened. So City Power hadn't sorted us out. And so down the street, WhatsApp group has kept us going, and we've been supporting each other. I've had a cable across the fence from my behind neighbor on another street, supplying us with electricity to keep us going, because we run businesses and so on from home. But what was it last night? Eventually the men and folk in the street said on the WhatsApp group, let's help City Power. So there's all the men mobilized through WhatsApp with their angle grinders and spades and swords and whatever else, helping City Power. And at 11 o'clock last night, we all got power back. So here is the power of technology, mobilizing community to do something life-giving. And of course, the unbelievable comments were, more hands make light work. Oh, my word. So the corny stuff came flying. But at the end of the day, we clicked beers together in the middle of the street at 11 o'clock at night when the lights came on. What am I saying here? God is turning the lights on by us finding a new community that makes the world a better place. Let the light of Christ shine, and he gets the glory. So I want to say thank you to Robin for being the amazing person who's pulled all of this together. To all of those, let's do all wave hands at everybody. This is the way of clapping. But bless you, Robin, for all the work that you've done. Thank you to each of the who've brought their insights, their humility, their God-honoring nature. Let's wave to all of the panelists as well. Thank you for what you've done. Bless you all. And so I'm going to invite you, if you are able and where you are, to just pray the priestly blessing over each other. And I'm going to lead us into that and say this as you are able. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. God bless you. Thank you, everyone. Go with God.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Great.